Hey, everybody. Welcome to the first edition of Outside the Box Score Extra Innings right here on the Score 1260 YouTube channel. I'm Mark Rowlands, joined by my good friend Josh Boheim. You know Josh if you listen to the show. He's the unofficial co-host of the show. And this is a series where every once in a while I'm going to make some videos just to post here on YouTube that discuss things that are in the news. It's sort of hard when your show's only once a week to stay up to date on everything. And every once in a while, there's a story that I really want to talk about when it's still in the cycle. And we got hit with one of those yesterday. And that is the Kevin Brown situation in Baltimore. Kevin Brown, the play by play man for the Baltimore Orioles through Masson, it was revealed that he hasn't been in the booth since like July 23rd or something like that. It was revealed that he was suspended indefinitely for negative comments about the team when all he did was state their record against the Tampa Bay Rays at Tropicana Field since 2017. There was a graphic and everything. Now, I was a little hesitant at first to do this because I was like, all right, there's no way that's the only thing he was suspended for. There has to be something more to this. Let's wait for that other shoe to drop. It's been confirmed by multiple sources that that's the only reason. And this is just the Orioles being incompetent, I guess, from the ownership on down. And it's a really tough situation to be a broadcaster and see something like that happen. Obviously, I'm not a play-by-play guy. I'd love to be a play-by-play guy, and I'm hoping to get an opportunity to do that in the next couple of years. And the thing about being a play-by-play guy is telling the story of the game. And when the Orioles are playing in Tropicana Field, the story of the game is that they haven't won a series there since 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Plain and simple. That's what you're going to talk about. And that's what Kevin Brown did talk about. And to see the reaction by the organization to say, nope, can't talk about that. When, if anything, all it does is paint this year's team in a better light.
Right.
Is ridiculous to me. And I really don't understand the mindset of the people in the higher ups of the Baltimore Orioles organization for making this decision. And this could happen, like, if this happened to anybody, it would be annoying. And I would have a very similar reaction. For it to happen to somebody like Kevin Brown, who is a rising star in this business, he's still very young.
Mm-hmm.
A rising star in this business who Syracuse area people will know very well as the voice of the Syracuse Chiefs for a number of years before he became the voice of the Washington Nationals. He was actually just called up to be the voice of the Nationals on radio before going over to the Orioles with Masson, who the television broadcast network also broadcasts the Nationals.
Right.
And he had done some TV work with Masson doing Nationals games. So, and obviously, he's on ESPN. He does college basketball. He's a young, really, really good play-by-play guy with local ties. Syracuse University kid, like I said, voice of the Chiefs. This is a bad look from top to bottom on the part of the Orioles. And I just, it floors me to see this happen.
Yeah, I mean, the number one thing that I always was told too when you talk about play-by-play and being a broadcaster in general is just to be yourself, right? Be honest, just be a person. And like you said, obviously, when it comes to if he was actually just trashing the team or management or something, you could kind of understand it. Even though if it's true, it should be told. But to just be telling a story, like you're saying, to just be talking about what's happening, why this series is important. They haven't, this is the premier matchup of probably in baseball right now. These
Yeah.
two teams, two of the best teams in the league, outside of the Braves. This is the best series you could have in baseball, probably. This is part of the story. It's part the Orioles being so good right now. Why it's good, why it's such a fun time for Baltimore fans, is because they were so god awful for years.
Mm-hmm.
Decades. They were a laughing stock.
They made the playoffs a couple of times in 2010s.
True, I guess, to early 2010. Yeah. But, I mean, nearly a decade, they were a laughing stock in that division. That's part of the story. That's part of why.
Mm-hmm.
You have to relive the history there. And that's how you can be so happy now. It's really terrible. And I didn't realize, too, this is what brought light to me that teams get choice over this kind of, too. Where I thought, broadcast partners or whatever, I thought this would have been like the production side team that picks and chooses that. No, these teams can just pick and choose whichever broadcaster they want to do it for them. So, which makes sense, kind of, but yeah.
And that's sort of where I wanted to go with this. Is it's like that at various levels, across, every sport. And you look at like Gary Cohen during the Mets game last night. Straight up said, like, this is horrible, and, really trashed the Orioles for a good 35, 40 seconds.
Yep.
And, even brought up when they didn't bring back John Miller, who's one of the great play-by-play broadcasters ever. And he was the voice of the Orioles, and John Miller, brutally honest, and would say when the team was not playing well. And they decided not to bring him back because of that. What do you do? He goes over to San Francisco, and he's been there ever since. This happened in like the early 90s, I want to say.
Yep.
And he's been in San Francisco ever since. He's one of the most beloved play-by-play guys in the world. He did Sunday Night Baseball. He won the Ford C. Frick Award. He's in the Baseball Hall of Fame. This is the type of guy that Baltimore was just like, no, can't do it. And it really sucks because this is quite scary if you're a young broadcaster. If you're someone like me who is 24 years old and wants to try to break into this business in a somewhat meaningful way, why would I want to if I see that?
Yep.
And I put out a whole Twitter thread on this, and I mentioned on my show this past Saturday, we were talking about Syracuse football. And I wasn't trashing the team, but I said, why would I care so much if it seems like the university doesn't care that much about the football program? And seeing this, what if the folks at SU were my bosses? Would I have a show this coming Saturday? I don't know. Because I said something that, like I said, not trashing them.
Yeah.
But I did say they seem apathetic towards football. So I'm going to be apathetic towards football until the university proves to me that they care that much about this program.
Well, they've been known to, get rid of some criticisms in the local area, at least.
Everyone knows what we're talking about. I'm not going to use names. I'm not going to use organizations. Everyone knows the situation we're talking about, which is another reason why this hits close to home. We've seen this at the local level, and now we've seen it at the national level. And it's really scary. And I just think about, a guy we talked about before we even started doing this, we just mentioned him briefly, is Hawk Harrelson, former White Sox play-by-play guy, was taken over by the great Jason Benetti, who also made a crack at the Orioles about his former broadcast partner. Those two were calling Chiefs games together. So obviously he's going to stick up for Kevin Brown.
Yep.
And so he made a jab at the Orioles during the broadcast as well. But when Hawk was the voice of the White Sox, he is the biggest homer of all time. Was not afraid to call out the organization, to call out management, And he did it in a much more straightforward way. I mean, he would just, he'd straight up say, "This guy stinks. He doesn't know what he's talking about." I mean, Hawk Harrelson would last, what, a week with the Baltimore Orioles, apparently? It's when you see guys like that, or guys like, for as much as I don't love his style, Michael Kay at times can be quite critical of the Yankees organization.
Oh, yeah.
He's never been suspended for it. He's never, that's just the way it is. You pay these guys to, like I said, tell the story of the game. And sometimes that story involves poor management, poor organizational stuff, like an organization being run poorly, and poor play. I was sitting there in the studio in the Score 1260 studios doing a Mets game last week when the Mets lost 17-9. They gave up 7 home runs. So what did I say? I said the pitching wasn't very good. The pitching hasn't been good lately.
Mm.
If you want to win games, you need pitching. And I said all of this stuff during a Syracuse Mets broadcast. This was in the post-game show of the broadcast. I never got an email. I never got anything saying, "Hey, dude, don't talk negatively like that about the team."
Right.
The team's not very good. Plain and simple. So I'm going to talk about it. I mean, they're not going to make the playoffs. They've struggled ever since all of their big guys got called up, which was like May.
Right, the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
The very start.
They've struggled since then.
Yep.
And that's also part of baseball is you're going to win games, you're going to lose games.
Sure. Yeah, I mean,
bring it up.
You hire these guys to be opinionated in some sense.
Mm-hmm.
They're not mouthpieces for the team, or they shouldn't be. I mean, maybe Baltimore thinks that's what they are, but that's not the job. You can't tell the story of any team season at World Series champions winners. I mean, think of just last year, the Astros win the series. Was there ever a stretch where they lost 5 or 6 games in a row where things weren't going right? They lost a couple series. Of course. Mm-hmm. It's 162 games in a season. There's not going to be a perfect story. That's impossible. Yeah. There's always something to be criticized, and that's good. That's the only way you improve. I mean, pointing out these comments were so not harsh at all. I mean, it's laughable how
statistics. He was saying statistics.
Right. Like, I don't know what BS excuse they're going to come up with to try and keep this guy suspended or not, because I don't see anyone defending them. Right. Like, no Homer Baltimore fan even is like, I mean, you can't go out here and say this stuff about. Yeah. What did he say? I mean, it's so minuscule. It's laughable. I don't understand how they're going to stand by this. And, I mean, if I'm this guy, I don't want to be a Baltimore Orioles announcer anymore. I'm going to look the first opportunity that somebody offers me elsewhere, I'm leaving. I just feel like you can't talk.
I said that to my dad yesterday. And it's funny because Gary Cohen said the same thing on the Mets broadcast. It was, if you don't want him, there are 29 other teams that do, because that's how good he is.
Yep.
Like,
that's high praise too from Gary.
What's that?
That's high praises from Gary. That's really nice of it.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy that, and he's absolutely right, because when you get to be at that level, and you can, if you can work for one team, you can work for 30. Yep. I'm telling you right now, if the San Francisco Giants, who have like 8 ridiculously good broadcasters, every single person on the Giants broadcast team is fantastic. If Kevin Brown was like, "I want to work for you," they'd say, "We'd find a spot." He's that good. And honestly, the segment he did was really good.
Right. I watched it. It's hard to find what's wrong with it.
Yeah, it's good storytelling. It's really good research. It's everything. It's just a well-produced pregame segment. And he got suspended for it. And, like you said, when these teams are the ones that control the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
That's when it gets dangerous. And there are, like I said, there are examples at the local level here in Syracuse of stuff like that happening, of a team controlling a narrative around them. And it's just dangerous.
Yep.
Plain and simple, we're moving away from honest broadcasting, something that has always been the backbone of what broadcasting is just pure honesty and telling the right story.
Yep.
And if you can't tell the story without the team getting mad at you
Mm-hmm.
and risking your job, that just thinking about what the future could hold for people like Kevin Brown,
Right.
or I think of, you know, I, I don't know if he'll enjoy me using him as an example here, but like Evan Stockton for the Mets, he's I've heard him say many things very similar to what Kevin Brown said.
Yep.
Very similar about, hey, we've, struggled in this stretch. This is, you know, never like a problem. It's never even come remotely close to being a problem, actually.
Right.
It's just the way you do it. And especially when a team like the Syracuse Mets this year has struggled mightily,
Mm-hmm.
you can't just always sit there and say everything's sunshine and rainbows, because it isn't always. And from like 2015 until now, very little was sunshine and rainbows with the Baltimore Orioles.
Yep.
And you said laughing stock. They had one of the biggest jokes in baseball was Chris Davis for like 2 years.
Yep.
And I
I mean,
remember the graphic going around. It was Zach Greinke's last 300 plate appearances versus Chris Davis's, and Zach Greinke was like immensely better. That guy's
yeah.
a pitcher. Like,
Yeah. I, yes. Yes. It's just hard. It's hard to like materialize. It started, you know what I mean? You said honest broadcasting, and you never saw it in sports as much. Like over the last couple, like 10 years, probably it started reaching up in other just, news, whatever.
yeah.
And then it's getting there. You're right. We're like these sports teams are trying to control this narrative, and they're basically just getting rid of unbiased journalism sometimes and just reporting, broadcasting, whatever. It's crazy. I mean, we're talking about people getting offended over things that are just numbers. You can't be what you're mad at your team doing bad. Do a better job.
Yeah.
The Orioles are so mad about being bad in 2016, 17, 18. Maybe try to do anything. It's these small market teams that get away with, I mean, as a Reds fan, it's the same crap. It'd be like if the Reds came out and fired someone for looking bad. It's like, dude, you're not trying to win. They can't look at themselves in the mirror and say that for that 5-year stretch, they were honestly trying to win games. They can't. It's impossible. They were racing to win 55 games. That was their goal those years. And it's insane that you can then be mad about that when someone calls you on it, because that's what was happening. You weren't trying to win.
And the Orioles are a rebuild success story.
Yeah.
You don't get to the end of the rebuild to the success without the rebuild.
Which is fine. It's good. Yeah, you did a good job. You had to be bad to get good. That's fine. Just accept that being bad was part of the struggle. It's part of it. Same with the Reds now. It just happens. These are good cycles for teams to have. And, maybe it doesn't always go down as far. I mean, teams just do it differently. The Yankees refuse to rebuild constantly. I mean, they went out and they traded for a reliever at the deadline. Do they need a reliever? Is that helping their team? They're in 4th place. They have no hopes of making the playoffs. Outside of New York, nobody thinks this team's anything. The Dodgers constantly, it feels like, refuse to rebuild. Some markets, that's just the cycle. But you're right. They're a success. Acknowledge it, appreciate it, and just be happy you're good for a couple years, man. What are we doing? What are we doing?
I just it's a sad look for the Baltimore
Yes.
Orioles, and hopefully it is not a trend that continues.
Yeah.
Because if it is, you're going to turn a lot of people away from trying to get into this business.
Yeah.
If this happened when I was like a freshman in college, I'd be like, well, probably not going to try to be a play-by-play guy.
No.
Even I like I have done, I did play-by-play for 3 years
Yep.
in college, and I called some really bad teams. I called some really good teams. I called
Yep.
NCAA tournament games for the basketball team. I called SUNYAC playoff games for the baseball team.
Yep.
Oswego women's volleyball was a joke. I don't think I ever called a win in
Yep.
their games. So what do? You talk about it. Yeah, the team is not very good.
Yep.
They've lost 4 games in a row. They haven't won a set in the last 2. Like you, you say stuff like that.
Right.
Never once was I asked by the the sports director, hey, be a little less harsh on the team. No.
Right.
And I probably said stuff when I was, first getting into it that was way worse than what Kevin Brown just said.
Oh yeah.
I probably went out and trashed someone at some point. And
Lord knows I did, Mark. Lord knows I did.
well, I just there was one time there was like a real problem with that during a broadcast. And I'm not going to say the kid's name, and I'm not going to say what team it was with, but this kid who was a fairly experienced play-by-play guy went off on a coach during a broadcast. Like just went off. And it was bad enough where we had to be like, yeah, you can't call their games anymore. This is when I was the assistant sports director, and I had to go to him and say, you can't do this team anymore.
Yeah, that's okay.
And which is tough, but it was that bad. Like it wasn't just, this guy,
Made a couple bad decisions.
Yeah, made a couple bad mistakes. It was like
he's a bad guy, I assume.
Yeah, he like came after the coach's character and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it was brutal. And we had the recording and we had to do that. But that was the only example. And that's because he went that far off the deep end. And we didn't kick him off broadcasts. We just said that team. We're like, yeah, you can do this team, you can do this team, but no more of doing that team.
Yeah. It's weird too to see this, you see it with like the talking heads in sports too, where like sometimes when, they almost can get their content by just going to a team or someone like Stephen A with the Cowboys or something, for example, like kind of that ragging on and like there's this beef, but with like a play-by-play guy, like he's just giving you numbers and stats. Like you say, it's a storytelling thing. There's no like vehement, like hate towards your team. He's your employer. He's telling your story. I don't get it. I don't get why you feel the need to, control this story in any means, or to really to screw with it. Because if you don't want him to tell it like that, then you just want to erase history. I don't know what's happening here. I just need to see something from the Orioles in the next couple days, and it should be an apology.
Yeah,
is what it should be. And if it's not, dumpster fire organization.
Agreed. They should. I mean, they should have issued an apology yesterday. But as soon as they saw the backlash, they should have been like, crap, we made a mistake.
Yep.
I don't know if the organization is competent enough to realize they made a mistake. It seems like Kevin's going to be back in the booth at some point quite soon. That's what the reports are saying. But the fact that he was suspended at all is what's ridiculous.
I'll be interested to see if they let him back on and if he's doing like the thank you for the outreach of the support from everyone, blah, 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 or if they just tell him to ignore it. Go on.
If I had to guess, we won't see him make a public statement about it.
I don't think so.
And just know that that's because of the organization and not because of him.
Oh yeah,
Because he absolutely would be the type of guy to thank everyone and but I don't think we'll see a public statement because I think the organization is going to try to sweep this under the rug as fast as they possibly can.
Yep.
Which is also just asinine and stupid.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's those are our thoughts on the Kevin Brown situation. We stand with Kevin Brown. This is ridiculous, and the Orioles organization should, like you said, it, shove an apology out there. It could be the worst. Well, here's the thing: it will be the worst written apology ever. Like it's gonna be one of those. We apologize if you didn't agree with our decision. Like,
yep.
It's gonna be one of those. But I guess it's better than nothing.
I can even see it being like, well, there were other comments made outside of this that led us to our decision. You guys don't know the whole story. I could see it like one of those, but we're ultimately sorry, and Kevin will return X amount.
Yeah,
something that takes no fault for what they've done and admits no wrongdoing.
No,
something like that.
Yeah, that's. I mean, Peter Angelos has been described as the Dan Snyder of Major League owners, so this shouldn't be
good?
surprising.
Dan Snyder, he was no good.
And no, not really.
I bet you they're buddies. They're pretty close to each other down there.
Yeah, actually, they probably do know each other.
They probably do.
They probably do. But just wanted to get that out there. Gavin, hope you're back in the booth soon.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I hope you get a different job in the off season because you don't deserve that.
Yeah.
Especially from a network that has had its own issues in recent years. Not going to get into all of that, but Masson is kind of a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
And it's a whole thing between the Nationals and the Orioles and broadcast rights and who pays the most money and who gets it's a whole thing. So I hate to say it, but if I was not surprised to see that network had another massive screw up like this.
Yeah.
Because we've seen it a lot from them in recent years. Well, that's going to wrap it up for Outside the Box for Extra Innings. Thank you, everyone, so much for watching. Thank you to Josh for being here. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe on the video. Make sure to listen to Outside the Box Score every Saturday at 11 a.m. on the Score 1260. You can find it right here on the Score 1260 YouTube channel or on the Twitch channel that I've put in the banner down below. We'll have more of these videos coming out at some point. Like I said, there's probably not going to be a certain schedule to them. Just whenever I want to talk about something and I think my opinion might be wanted by some of the people around here. I had a few people asking me about my opinion on this yesterday. So just wanted to get it out there in video form. And yeah, like I said, make sure to stay tuned here on the Score 1260 YouTube channel. You can always follow me on Twitter at marker_box to hear more things about the show. You can follow Josh on Twitter at OGBojo42 as well. He's always on the show. He tweets funny things sometimes. But follow him, follow me. Stay tuned for more, and we'll see you next time. Peace.